Everybody, put your phones away if you would. Let's get started. So I went through and I graded just about everything, and I gave feedback on the writing assignments. So I want you to go back and make sure you're looking at the feedback I'm giving you. Whenever you don't get a full score on anything, there should either be, like on your notes, there should be a little button right here that tells you I said something as feedback to you. And then the writing assignments is a little bit more detailed. So like writing assignment 1, I got done for everybody. Writing assignment 2, I got a few done. I'll get the rest done before Sunday. But if you click on this checklist here, it's going to show exactly how I graded it in terms of the rubric for how the points are allotted, and then my input to you on what you could have done better and what the wrong answers were. So make sure you're going back and looking at that. What I'm seeing on the writing assignment 2 is that some people aren't really following the writing prompt. Like, not everyone did this, but a few people just wrote about what they believed in without talking about the other point of view and without quoting from the article and without talking about a time that you changed your mind. So make really sure that whenever you're doing a writing assignment, you're looking at exactly what the writing prompt is and not just writing passionately about something. I'm assuming that you guys have had a lot of experience writing and you can write passionately. And this class isn't about writing passionately, but it's around writing analytically and in a detailed fashion to do analysis. What did I say about knowledge last class? How do you get knowledge? Where can you go now? You can just go Google it, right? If you got a good source. And it's analysis that really gets you great jobs, higher pay, and I think a better quality of life. So we'll talk more about writing assignment 2 and the kind of analysis I'm looking for there. And then also, let me just show us the calendar here. Note that this week's kind of back to normal in that we'll have notes 6 and 7, chapter 3 quiz, and then that writing assignment. No peer discussion responses, right? Because we didn't have one last week. That'll come back in the following week. Let's take out a page for notes. Start feeling good about algebra, right? Those internal feelings about algebra, turn them bright. Remember those? Oh yeah, come on, just think positive here. We're gonna do some algebra around supply and demand. We're gonna work together on this. We're gonna get there. But we need to know this because we've got some questions on this on our midterm. So I'm going to rely on you helping each other too on this. All right. So note this. Here I've got data points that I discussed when I was first going over supply and demand with you. That is, here all a demand curve and a supply curve are these estimations. What do we call these lines? What math do you call these lines that fit to a scatter plot of data? Line of best fit or a line of least squares is what mathematicians call them. Well, Excel does them for you, right? They create the Y and the X values there to describe a linear line. And so note what these dark blue points are. These are the points that correspond to, so at 42, right? So that's the quantity demanded. And then here at 24, and so on. And then these lighter blue squares, this at 40 represents 16 along our x-axis, and so on. So just notice how this data is being plotted here. Now, on our y-axis, what are we measuring on our y-axis? Price. But when you look at it mathematically, what is the y-axis represented as? Y, right? Y. And then the x-axis is here represented by what? In supply and demand. Quantity, right? So know that when you're solving for y and x, you're not just solving for y and x, but you're solving for y, which means price. And how do we express price? When you pay for something, if you buy something, you pay in dollars and cents, right? So you go to what decimal place when you're expressing price? 2 decimal places, right? To the hundredths place. So know that when you pump out a value for Y, that you've got to simplify it or round it down to the second decimal place. So it's dollars and cents. On your X, even though this X, so notice here where we have this intersection point, notice it looks like 8 point something down there. Are you going to sell point something of something? You can buy an iPhone on sale. It's a 0.5% of an iPhone, right? No, you're not going to buy 0.5. So you're always there going to round up or down depending on where that number is going to go. Now, here are the lines. So here is the equation for the line for demand. Here's the equation for the line for supply. What do I do? How would I determine the price and quantity here? What do I do algebraically to solve for X and Y? Yeah, set them equal to one another. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that equation for Y, negative 0.5432x plus 36.37, and you're going to set it equal to Y or what? Yeah, so you're going to set that equal to that. Then what are you going to do? What are you going to isolate on one side? Yeah, then you're going to isolate the X on one side. So maybe if this side is negative and that's positive, what might you do? Yeah, you might add this amount, which is going to get rid of it here, right? And then add it to this. Then what are you going to do with this number here? Subtract it from this and then subtract it from there. And then when you've got X, something X equals something, how do you solve for X? Divide both sides by that amount that X is divided, that amount that X is multiplied by. Now, I just went through that really quickly. We're going to go through it in detail, but let's do it step by step. Let's struggle through this. All right, get a piece of paper, set this equal to this, talk to people around you, especially if you're feeling a little uncertain about this. Someone around you's got this. And then we'll review this step by step. So notice this is what you're setting up, right? You're setting one equation equal to the next, and you're solving for Y and X, but remember Y is P and X is Q. So remember, isolate the X on one side, the number on the other side. So check your work here. If you've gotten this far. So we have an econ tutor. This tutor should be able to help you with this kind of math. We have a math tutor. They're right across the hallway. Does everybody understand how I got to this point here? Do we have questions on this? This is straightforward, at least now. Those who've gotten help too. Hayden, what's up? Later, but first leave it with all of its expression, right? And then plug it in to get your Y, right? But then at the very end, you'll round your X, okay? Does this go on further when you do the math? Is it more than 8.28 what? Okay, let me do the math here, because let's write that out, that whole 8 point whatever here. When I did this Excel, I should have done something else. So what am I doing here to solve for X? Given what we've got right there, what am I doing? Yeah, so I'm dividing what by 4? Both sides. So effectively, I'm getting rid of 4.2524 on the left side, right? And I'm dividing 35.23 by 4.2524. And we get, okay, so write this whole thing out. So even though it says here, X equals 8.28473333 to 8.28473333. Are we not seeing that on our calculators? You guys got something different? You have a different calculator than me doing math differently? You, yeah, I got it. Okay, maybe I punched something wrong. 35.23, right? 35.23. Yes. Okay. Divided by 4.2524. Okay, let's stick with whatever you got. It's good enough for government work, we'll say, at this point. Okay, so now what am I going to do with this X? I plug it back into which formula? Either formula, right? I plug that into either formula, and that gives me a price of 15.31, and here I got 15.30. Good enough for government work. Okay. Now you're expressing your price. So do that. Make sure you write this. Price equals $15. Put the dollar sign 15.30 or 31, whatever you got. I don't know if you've done algebra and never thought, wait, when do you ever use algebra? Economists use algebra, right? This is determine how a market clears. How do you get to equilibrium? And then for quantity, put Q equals, and what number are we going to use? Yeah, we're going to use 8. We're going to use a whole number there. We will come back and review this again. There is a prerequisite for this class, and it is having algebra in your background. So if you don't have algebra ever in your background, make sure you're seeing me during office hours or going to see the tutor or talking to somebody else in class. We're not going to go much further in math than this, right? It's going to be a lot of solving for X. But if solving for X is difficult for you, I'm happy to help you, and the tutors are happy to help you to get there. But we have to have kind of a basic level of math skills to be able to get through the math that's in a macroeconomic class and a microeconomic class. So both the classes I teach here. We good so far? And if we're not good, do we know what we need to do? Jose? Yeah? Yeah? Francis, we good? I just saw a look in your face earlier. Okay, all right, we know where to go. All right, so on our notes, let's continue here. I'm gonna move on to something else now. What I wanna do before we practice for the homework, I wanna go over equilibrium and then something on the writing assignment. So if you would, draw just a supply and demand graph, but draw one without an equilibrium point. So those of you in macro, I'm going to do some different examples as well, but not for this, for what we're going to do next. So do a line above equilibrium, below equilibrium. This concept is called price discovery. Let's write that. We didn't do that in macro. Price discovery. So we just figured out precisely where equilibrium would eventually get to in that market, given the equation for the line of supply and demand. But there are forces underneath there that we needed to understand of why does it get there? Why do we get to this point? And so let's do an arrow right here to this point we've been assuming in the past. We call this market clearing equilibrium. I didn't learn this until I was in my 40s, so let's learn this earlier than me. Why do I have a hyphen there? Market clearing. Let me teach you some English. When you use two words that function as an adjective together, you hyphenate them. He just got a little smarter today. All right. So market clearing equilibrium right there. Now, what does that mean? That means that the conditions of both suppliers and their desires and needs and the conditions of consumers and their desires and needs and psychology have been met. But there's something very specific about this. So let's up top, let's call this P1. Is there a problem here at that price? Do we see any problem in this market? Or at this price, here's our demand, there's our supply. What's the problem called? What is this? So let's draw a bracket here. Or a man smooching sideways. Sorry. What is that? What is not the man smooching sideways with the Cro-Magnon forehead? What is that when you have at a price that high where the supply is much greater than the demand? Yeah, so here we have a surplus. So let's write that. All right, so let's think this through logically. Let's analyze this situation. If you are a business in this market and the price is this high, and you've got what? If your supply is that high and your consumers are not really buying that product, what's happening on your store shelves? What's happening in the warehouse? It's what up? It's stacking up, right? And that's a cost to you. Your warehouse is a cost to you. You have to look over it. If it's something that's perishable, you've got to spend money and keep it cool. So you're going to want to get rid of that excess, right? How are you going to do that? Boom. Wow. Good economists here, good business people. So you are going to, so draw this. You as a supplier, out of your own self-interest, are going to lower your price. Right? You're not doing this because you love your customer. Maybe you do, but you're trying to get rid of all that surplus in the warehouse. It's costing you time and money. Now, how are consumers going to react to that lower price? Look at this. It tells us right here, right? As you lower the price, consumers buy more. And so notice those arrows are showing the market clearing price discovery mechanism. When the price is too high, things stack up in warehouses, suppliers lower their price, and then consumers come in and buy that product. And the market is cleared, meaning there's no excess, right? There's not too much demand, there's not too little demand. That market is cleared. We got to a stable equilibrium for that point in time. This is why economists like markets. It tends to take care of at least business-related societal problems on their own. We're going to get into price floors and ceiling, minimum wage, and rent control a lot more next week with how when the government tries to intervene, it can create some problems, but then also some other methods we can solve problems around low incomes and high rents other than just price controls. Okay, now in this situation, let's draw P2 down here. Okay, in this situation, let's also identify this problem here. See what I end up drawing here. So that bracket, what is that representing? Where our price is lower than equilibrium and we have more demand than we have supply. Yeah, we're running out of stuff. That's a shortage. And when there's a shortage, you might love your customers. You might really want to treat them right. You might not want to try to extract every penny out of your customers, but you got to stay in business. And it could be they don't like other products of yours, but this one they really like. What are you going to do? You're going to what? Yeah, raise the price. So no, here, let's draw that out here. So you notice, so we're going to start on this side. You, the supplier, following your own self-interest, are going to raise the price because you know you keep selling out of that product. By the way, let me tell you a quick socialism story. I don't know if I've told you this story. In England, when they were a socialist economy in the 1980s, this reporter went to a store. Have I told you this? No? The reporter went to a store and it was some kind of chocolate bar that was really popular. It wasn't there. And the reporter said, yo, you don't got this chocolate bar here. I mean, this is the greatest thing. Everyone loves it. And the store owner said, yeah, but it was such a pain in the ass. People kept buying it. We always ran out. So we just stopped stocking it. That's a socialism joke, right? Because that it was true. They got paid no matter what they did. So they're running a business and it runs out. Yeah, that's too much trouble. I'm not going to stock that. You get how that doesn't make any sense from our perspective? From our perspective, if you're running out, what are you going to do? Buy more and do what with the price? raise the price. But with socialism, when you're working just without any incentives, you're going to do whatever lessens your workload, and your customers are going to walk away unhappy. Now, is that the case with everything in socialism? I wouldn't say so, but there's certainly a story that shows that this mechanism wasn't taking place. So notice the suppliers raise their price, and how do consumers respond to a higher price? Yeah, they buy less, and notice that goes in, you get to this market clearing equilibrium. So let's talk a little bit more just about how we understand our determinants. I went back and I graded all of your notes from last week, or your one set of class notes, and I looked through your answers to the questions at the end of class in terms of the determinants, and I saw some issues, not a lot. So I just want to make sure we're clear on how they work so that we can do the writing assignment for this week. We have how many this semester? 15. How many do you have to do? 10. And you don't want to save it to the very end, because at the very end, I have 2 of them on 1 week. And so you're going to want to spread them out. So like I've been saying, try to get these early ones done. This one is a really good one to do, to make sure you're really getting down these supply and demand determinants and these mechanisms. And so here, I want to do something macro, folks, like we did in macro, but I'm going to give you different examples. So let me show you how I want you to divide up your notes for this. On your page, I want you to have an area that's going to have some discussion up above about what the problem is. And then I want you to have split in half. And then below it have supply and demand graph, and then leave a little extra room down here. So here in the middle, you're going to do 2 supply demand graphs. So draw those in equilibrium there in the middle. I'm going to tell you the examples I'm going to use now. And then write this out, if you would, when you're done drawing those supply and demand graphs. To those of you who are in micro and macro, both online and in person, after this week, everything changes. The following week, it's going to be totally different between the 2 classes, just so you know. Maybe that's a good thing, Mr. Wright. Maybe that's not a good thing, depending. More challenge. but less repetition. Me too. And I'm thrilled, so I don't have to talk about the same thing. So what I'm doing is I'm laying out how I want you to answer the questions for the first part of this writing prompt for this week. And so the first part is going to give you a few scenarios where you have to answer for a situation. And notice I got 2 situations written up above. What happens in that market? What market is it? What curve is changed? Which direction does it shift? Which determinant and why did it change? And then what's the ultimate effect upon price and quantity? And what I want to encourage you to do when you do those examples for the writing assignment is you draw this out so you can practice this, but also so you can see intuitively what's taking place. That is, what are the answers to these questions? So here on the right, we're looking at steak, market for steak. And here on the left, here on the left, we're looking at steak. Here on the right, we're looking at mac and cheese. What do you think? And by the way, on the way I'm going to test you on this, and we'll go over how I'm going to test you on this next week. I'm going to tell you whether 2 products are complements and substitutes. I once had a class argue with me that cookies and milk don't go together as complements. So I just don't want to have any arguments. I'm going to tell you these are complements, these are substitutes. So, you decide in your own life, but on the test, I'm going to decide. I'm telling you, what do you think I'm telling you about steak and eggs? No, I'm saying complements. Nobody steak and eggs? Of course, thank you. All right, but I guess you all are a lot healthier than my generation. Oh, that's true. Right. Okay. All right. So, hey, this is aspirational, man. This is in your future. One day you'll be having steak and eggs every morning. All right. And I'm trying to make this future bright for you to motivate you to do this. Okay. So steak and eggs, they're complements to one another, not substitutes in the future. Now, look at your list of determinants. What curve would this shift? Why? Answer these 5 questions. Fill out this graph. I'm going to review it with you, but I want you to struggle through this with each other. Yeah. When's the first test? October, I think, 20th. It's on the calendar. Yeah. No. And be sure you email me so I can send you videos of what you missed next week. Yeah. Talk to me right after class. Let's look it over. Let's look it over. We'll figure it out. Okay. This month? Cool. I'll send you. So again, well, not cool. I hope she's okay. Email me and I'll send you the video of the lecture so you don't miss anything. Really? Yeah. Do you go to Irma Jean's down in Olivehurst? That's a really good soap. I was just there Saturday. What was it called again? Okay. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, I hope she's okay. Yeah. Yeah. We need soul food in this town. Come back and talk to me at the end of class. We'll figure it out. Okay. I'm gonna be here Monday, but now leaving to Hawaii Tuesday morning. I won't be back. So I'm only meeting you with the class, but I will turn in like all the work. Yeah, and send me an email after the class that you missed, and I'll send you a video of the class. Okay. Okay. Well, it's like Okay, so something I saw on some people's work is that they were writing down normal good and inferior good for everything, and you only need to write that when you're dealing with the determinant of income. So just stay to that, all right? So you're not, so do you get that point? Only when it's an income determinant do we use normal and inferior. It doesn't matter at this point because our determinant is what? What are we talking about here? What determinant are we using here for steak and eggs? Price. So here, let's write that. Increased price of complement. Now, which curve is shifting? The demand curve, right? Isn't that a determinant for demand? Yeah. Okay. So which way is it going to shift? Is there an increase in price? And remember, from this perspective, even if you don't believe, like, because so many of you guys don't believe that these two things are complements, and you don't have the taste for them quite yet, exaggerate the price change. So now the price of what has it gone up? Steak has gone up to $100 for a pack. So what happens to demand for, or sorry, eggs have gone up to $100 a pack. What happens to demand for steak? Goes in, right? So let's show a demand curve going in and draw that. Okay, so what market are we talking about here? And this seems really straightforward, but sometimes we get confused when we're dealing with two different products, which market we're analyzing. So what market are we analyzing here? Steaks, let's write that. And then curve, demand, and it's gone left or in. Don't say up or down on this writing assignment. So I'm going to say in. And then what's happened to price and quantity? Down. Is it quantity demanded? Quantity supplied, right? Because we're moving in along the supply curve, quantity down. So here's what you're going to do on the homework. You're going to say for that question, all 5 of these things. And really, as I did in my last class, the kind of 6 things, because you're saying which curve and in which direction. So you'd say, as an answer to that, the market for steak demand has gone in because of an increased price of a complement, which has caused the price to go down and quantity to go down. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. Okay, let's go on to mac and cheese. Work on that one, show it to each other. Yeah. You can say left, right, or in or out. Yeah. So help each other out on this. I'm going to say mac and cheese is, what do you think? When you guys graduate and you make lots more money, you're going to buy more mac and cheese? No, you're not. No, studies show. By the way, if you want to sound smart, just say studies show. Studies show that when people, so maybe you are, but again, here's why I say it on the test. I'm going to say what they are. We're saying this is an inferior good. Emily, did you have your hand up? Okay. So share your answers with each other. That's what I like to hear. Those online, bear with us. Hopefully you're doing your own work to figure this out. All right, in the interest of time, let's all come back together. So incomes decrease throughout the United States. This is an inferior good. So what does that mean? Demand's going to do what? Yeah, it's, well, out to the right. Yeah, I get what you mean, but we got to be precise, especially in this writing assignment. So the demand curve is going to shift out. Let's draw that. And again, what I'm recommending you do, and I'm going to give you some time to practice this, is for your homework that you draw these out for yourself. So you can practice, so you'll know how to draw supply and demand in the future on tests, and then also you'll see intuitively what's going to happen to price and quantity. All right, so our market was, I'm assuming nothing here. What is our market? Mac and cheese. Is that how they spell in mac and cheese? Curve is demand, and it went very nice. Demand went out. Our determinant was okay, decrease in income and no. So there's a decrease in income. Let's write that out. And the fact that it's a what? Inferior good. If you wrote decrease in income, that's not correct because I don't know if you understand the difference between a normal good and an inferior good. Hayden? I mean, by saying demand increases because there's a decrease in income, I get that you understand this concept now. Am I answering your question? Okay. No, you need to say what happened to income. So income went down and it's an inferior good. And you could say inferior and I'm going to give you credit for it. You don't have to say good. And then obviously, since we've drawn our demand curve, our price has gone up and our quantity has gone up or increased. So here again, for the homework, you'll say, for the answer to this question, you'll have to have all those components. In the market for mac and cheese, the demand curve went out because of a decrease in income for an inferior good, causing the price to go up and the quantity to increase. Make sense? Yeah. So, and here's kind of the point why I brought this up, because I saw a lot of people on the in-class work from last week write inferior or normal for everything. Don't. Only write inferior or normal if your determinant is income. That's the only time it comes into play in this analysis.
So let's say like you had a higher income, like income went up, so you want to go buy a inferior good?
Normal good. You'd say normal good in that sense. If income decreases, and if I'm right that mac and cheese is an inferior good, yeah, that would put, and so here's a little bit more precise way economists talk. We'd say that puts upward pressure on the price. Is every mac and cheese seller going to raise their price right away? No, but will they have that ability to because they have more demand? And so that's why we precisely say there's upward pressure. So likely over time, that price will increase. Will it right away increase? No. But again, this is a way, like I've said about these kind of this kind of analysis and analysis of determinants of markets, it's a way to see into the future. So economists are always really careful with how we say this. We don't say, well, that's going to cause the price to go up tomorrow. We'll say that puts upward pressure on the prices, and beware, you're going to see in grocery stores eventually a higher price on mac and cheese. These are all predictions. What a business decides to do to keep its customers could be different, right? Your customers might be on such a razor's edge on their budgets. You're selling in a poor area and you really want to keep your customers, you might not increase the price, even though there's more demand for it, right? But what could you do since there's more demand for it? You could increase the price. So it's a way of predicting what might happen. If I could predict exactly what human beings are going to do in every situation, I wouldn't be in this situation here, right? I'd be a billionaire on the stock market, right? But this is a way to try to understand those things. All right, now let's do something different. Follow along with me, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this step by step. So let's do two supply and demand graphs next to each other. But don't draw supply and demand. Follow my lead here. We're going to make this one over here gas. And we're going to make this one over here electric transportation. In the market for gas, I'm going to show a really steep demand curve. Do you remember what that's called? What kind of demand is this? Inelastic, yeah. More on that 2 chapters ahead. For electric transport, is there a lot of electric transport out there that we're all using? Not yet, right? So let's put the supply really low and the demand intersecting up here. In other words, what's the price for electric transport right now? Really high. And let's show a supply curve. This is just kind of our common 45-degree angle there for gas. And now draw price and quantity. Bless you. So there's a problem in this first market. We talked about this problem, or I think first day of class when I was introducing what are the topics we're going to talk about. And the topic here is that the gasoline doesn't, in its price, it doesn't include all of the cost to society for it. So let's write down below the gasoline market something. And that is, just recheck my figures here, 3 million people worldwide and 200,000, is that the right number? Yeah, 200,000 in US die early every year due to pollution. So I don't even have to talk about climate change when I'm talking about gas. If I added climate change onto this, we could go in a whole other direction. We'll do that later in the class, in the semester. Are you paying, when you're buying gasoline, are you paying for those families' children to go to school? Are you paying for their funeral expenses? Are you paying for all the medical bills they incurred before they died early? When you're buying gas, are you paying for that when you're buying gas? So that price for gas really, in a societal sense, is what? Too high or too low? Too low because it's not including all of the costs of all of these deaths. And so what we say is, let's write down below here, the price for gas without government intervention excludes social costs. And what do I mean by social costs? I mean all of those costs incurred by people dying early, dying prematurely. Is this news to you? Did you know this? Did you know gasoline was killing that many people every year? I think in California, it's like 20, 30,000 per year dying because of pollution early. Solely in California. We're a big state. Yeah. It's a lot of people dying early, right? And it's from you. I'm not trying to bring out too much guilt here, right? We're doing policy analysis. How do we make this better, right? How do we analyze the situation? Whoa, hold on, one at a time. So you do epidemiological studies. Say that fast 3 times. You do epidemiological studies that look at the causes. So you look at a population of people. You look at the level of pollution in one area versus the pollution in another. So say you take Los Angeles and say you take, I don't know, somewhere clean air. Help me out. Does that exist anymore? Montana. Let's do Montana without fires, right? And you look at death rates in those areas. And then you look at how people are dying in those areas. And you can use statistics to say, wait, the death rate in Montana is much lower from pulmonary disease, from asthma. Wait, the death rate in Los Angeles is much higher from those after we exclude population. And so we can extrapolate or make judgments from that, that those deaths that are excess in Los Angeles versus Montana are coming from more pollution. Because when you burn gasoline, you're not burning all of the particulate matter in gasoline. And so the exhaust is blowing out these particulate matter that go into the air. That's what we see when we see smog. And then people breathe that in. And then we know from other studies that are done on an individual basis on health, that when people breathe that in, their health deteriorates. So there are various ways you come to this number. Is it precise and perfect? No. Could this number be higher? Yeah. Could it be maybe be lower? Yeah. But this is the best estimate of scientists. Question. Yeah. Well, let's do this, and we'll talk about that process. Okay. So another question. All right. So note here, and Jose, I'm going to get to what you're getting at, but let me do it through the process I got here. So note that this amount here, so draw a double arrowed line right there, that what the market produces is too much. I'm not being a liberal up here telling you this. I'm being an economist telling you this, because even the most conservative anti-environmental protection economist would say this is a provable fact, that you are externalizing the cost of gasoline, right? When I pay for gasoline, I'm not paying for the cost of those people's medical bills or their funerals. And so this market has failed in some ways. And so what we say is that this less amount between those two arrows, this is socially optimal, something less than what we're currently producing. Now, I have a good conservative in my previous class who says we shouldn't do anything. And let me say that I'm not going to say he's wrong. From the more conservative perspective, the way you fight this is like economists on the conservative side is, yeah, this is a problem. But if it's a problem, we leave it up to consumers to decide. Call that consumer sovereignty. And if it is such a big deal, and people's friends and family are dying, they're going to eventually start using less gasoline. So let me give just voice to that conservative perspective. But we tend to be in this country moderate. We tend to, and in this state, pretty liberal. So we want to intervene in these markets. And so how do we intervene in this market in California? What do we do in the market for gas? We make the gas less efficient, but we make the market outcome more efficient because it causes fewer deaths. I don't know the number of people that are saved by our gas taxes and regulation, but it's got to be thousands, if not tens of thousands that are saved. And we don't hear that, right? When we hear about gas taxes, we just hear about, damn, that's expensive, not, damn, that saved 2,000 lives just this month, right? But it does. And so let's show this analysis here of what California does. Let's draw a new supply curve, shifting in. We can all sigh because, yes, indeed, this supply curve, let's do supply, sub, taxes, and regulation, makes the price what? Makes the price higher. But notice what it's doing. It's making the quantity we use lower. And so let's do a P2 and then a Q2 down here. Okay, but we still can do more. Electric transportation. What have we done for GM, for Ford, for Tesla? What has the government done for them in this market? Yeah, it's given them subsidies, and some would like to see them get more subsidies. Why? Well, let's draw what would happen. Let's say, let's do this. Let's give them massive amounts of subsidies. Now, politically, you know, being in America and being free citizens and voters, you're allowed to be against this, right? But I'm just analyzing why this might be an advantageous thing to do. So let's put this S and then do subsidies. So this is the supply curve after subsidies are given to the supplier. And what does that allow them to do? Yeah, so now you and I can get around in electric transport. Right now I'm looking at buying my next vehicle. My damn Prius is staying alive for way too long. I wish it would just, somebody want to crash into me, please? Sorry, I just said that on recording, so we're not going to get away with it. But I'm looking for a fully electric vehicle one of these days because, I don't know, number one, I'm cheap, and number two, I think it's a good idea. And it saved me money coming here and charging at View College and going home, charging there, and using electricity that in Northern California is generated using mostly hydroelectric, so pure green energy running a car. So I'm kind of down for that. Power goes out, then I turn on my generator and I pollute. But I do have a generator because I live up in the mountains. But you're right. Hey, with every solution, it's a really good point. With every solution brings up its other problem, right? There's no perfect solution to any problem. So notice these subsidies. What's happened? Electric transportation is now cheaper. Okay, what is electric transportation to gas transportation? What are those two goods to one another? Substitutes, right? What's just happened to the price of the substitute for gas? Okay, so what will happen to demand for gasoline? If let's say we do these massive subsidies to the suppliers, not just to me, because I think there's a problem with the way we've done this under the Biden administration. They're going to give me $7,000 to buy an electric car. So number one, what's the problem with that? Well, that benefits rich people like me, right? Because electric cars aren't cheap. And so those of us with a little extra money, oh, I can go buy myself an electric car and it'll be a little cheaper. I don't like that. I think it should go mostly to poorer people and not to people who make a good income. Furthermore, economically, you give that subsidy, let's say it's not subsidies to the manufacturers, but it's to me. What happens to this demand curve here? All the subsidies go to the consumer. What happens to demand? Shifts out or in? Look what happens. If it just goes to me, what happens to the price of electric transport? Goes up. That's a wrong way to do it. Instead, and some conservatives don't like this, and I understand their point, why are we giving money to companies that already make money? Well, here's the reason. So they can make more of the product, make it cheaper, and so now you are sitting at the market deciding, I'm going to do gas transportation or I'm going to do electric transportation. You now see the price of the substitute has gone down. So demand for gas will likely over time go down. So notice this. Now my demand's moved in, and look where we're getting to. Greater levels of social optimality. And so again, let me just state, politically, you can be against this. I get that. There are different reasons why people are against this, but there is some economic logic behind doing this. Okay, one other thing, and now this relates to our writing assignment even more. Number one, what I'm asking you is, what's your feeling about these gas taxes? Now, I don't want you to just say I'm against them because they make price higher. You're allowed to say that, right? I'm not going to tell you what you should say, but don't just say that, because I want you to have some kind of economic reasoning in there. I'm against them, but I see the fact that it's socially optimal to have less because of all these people dying who aren't buying the gas in the first place. Does that make some sense? So I want you to have some of this economic reasoning at least in with your yes, we should have gas taxes, or no, we shouldn't have gas taxes. Don't just state your opinion, but state your opinion with some economic reasoning. Now, also that article talks about this. So let's add something to our notes. It also talks about, what about the refiners? You tell me. What's happening with the refiners for gasoline? What did you read? Make a lot of, like, it's almost like a monopoly. There are 4 companies that control what they control. It's pretty well what we call an oligopoly. Very few controlling that market. And it's not in their economic interest to compete. Now, it's illegal for them to collude with one another. But do you think it happens? I know it happens. I know it happens in the cellular market because we pay much more for cellular service than people in Europe who have even better service than us, because we only have 4 major carriers who don't compete on price. Now, how are you going to convict them of that? I mean, they're not writing memos and sending them to the government. They're, hey, we're all agreeing to fix the price, right? They're doing it underhandedly. And so no doubt these gas companies, I mean, in my opinion, the data from that study shows that we in California are paying $3 to $4 billion more in gas that taxes and regulations don't explain. So most of us, when we look at high gas prices, go, damn California. I was just in Texas, gas was less than $3. I come here, it's $5.50. And most of us will just say, oh, well, that's the damn California government for raising taxes and having regulation. That's partially true. The other part of it is we've allowed 4 companies to control our market that then, what? Do they supply more or supply less? They supply less on purpose. Yes. So your family owns a gas station, right? And so you have a relationship with the supplier that says, to get the gasoline, I must get it from you, right? So, so for you guys, I have sympathy for you, but do you get that somebody else is playing a game with you as well? Right. And I think the point here and what the studies show is that those people that you call between, they're probably not a huge difference between them because they're not really competing with one another. Right? They might get on a call with one another, probably not a call because someone might be listening, right? Maybe go out on the golf course and say, okay, this week's what's the price? Right? That's the reality of it. And you guys, so we're stuck, but also people like you are stuck because your margin, gas stations, I don't think you make barely anything on your gas. Yeah. Gas stations don't make their profit from gas. They make it from everything else you go in and buy. Somebody else had their hand up. No, I mean, ask her. She has a gas. This is the case with, it's the refiners and the big oil companies that are making the profit. It's not the retail outlet. So they're getting screwed and we're getting screwed, for lack of a better economic term. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. We buy gas from Marathon or Western Refinery or 50 gallon, we sell for 5. That's all we make.
50 cents a gallon. And that's probably, so they're making something, but do you imagine that's covering all their costs? Much less a profit for your owner, right? Right, right. So the big issue that we're going to discuss all semester is that you have these government agencies whose job it is to make sure there's not price gouging going into it, but we don't fund them very well. Furthermore, we have lawyers there that they hire, but these lawyers are paid on government salaries. Now imagine the Chevron lawyers. Do you get my point? What they can pay them? And I'm not saying government lawyers are bad, but if you're a really good lawyer and you can make $1 million versus 100,000, you might go work for Chevron. And there might be more lawyers. And so there has, in an economist's opinion, and I think more and more, even my conservative friends are starting to say, we used to believe the market's perfect. Now we realize we're being gouged in a lot of areas, and maybe we need to crack down a little bit more on these companies. And so the article talks about how we're paying $3 to $4 billion more in the state of California that isn't explained by taxes and regulation, but easily politicians can just say that. And so somehow we all need to be a little bit more educated and really push for, let's investigate this and let's find some evidence that they are price gouging. You can find it out, but you need to spend a lot of money to investigate, because in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty, which requires, you know, the burden on proof is on the government. So am I giving you an easy answer? No. Right. The answer is we've got to spend a lot more money and time in looking into these things. And as the article states, if we're spending $3 or $4 billion more in California on gas than we should be, why not spend $100 million, which is an exaggeration, to investigate it and prosecute it? And then we save what? $3.9 billion. Not in this country, but it does happen. I mean, this brings me to something else that I think about. We are self-sufficient in gasoline in this country. My communist, my Marxist side comes out a little bit when we are paying the market price for gas everywhere. We drill all our own and refine all our own oil here. Not all refining, but most of it. But we drill our own here. Yet we pay prices that people in Europe pay who are dealing with shortages because of a war. And so in some senses, I think, this is me not being a pure market economist, maybe the president states for the next 6 months, this is the price of gasoline, deal with it. Okay, but hold on, think this through with me. The president says that, and let's say he has the authority, and he says the price of gasoline will be $3 everywhere, period. What will happen to profits for gasoline companies? Okay, they're already strong, right? So they'll go down, so there'll still be profits, they'll go down. Now, in the long run, what might an economist say? If they're not making high profits, what might a gas company not do? It might not invest in new supplies, might not invest in new refineries. So if you put a price cap on the gasoline, maybe in the future there'll be less for us. I say do it anyway. That's just my kind of radical opinion, because why are we paying gas prices so high when we make our own? Yeah.
Is the reason we're gas so high right now just because of the war?
Yes, because we buy gas at the price sold on a world market, even though we're making it right here.
Why do we pay like 30-40% more in gas every year? We don't get that much from Russia. We get a lot of gas.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like in the news, like they push the news on it, so they're like, oh, the consumer thinks that we should be spending more gas to be able to have it.
Right.
We'll push it on.
Because their costs have not gone up.
Yeah, exactly. So
The costs in Europe have gone up.
like South Korea, so rich right now.
Right.
The line for that project.
Hmm.
They're spending so much money.
Well, they're spending money on trying to get off of oil too, try to diversify a little bit.
Yeah, so they're pricing.
So I guess I'm trying to radicalize you a little bit here in that, you know, if we understand a market, it doesn't make sense why we're paying so much, because the Chevrons of the world are making incredible profits when their costs haven't really gone up. They'll just tell you, we always charge you a price based on what the world market price is, even though they're not facing that price. Aiden. Yes. They give enough money to our politicians where our politicians aren't going to force change. Now, how can we force change? Vote. Did you all vote last time? I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to have you self-identify, but do we all vote? No, but if everyone became educated about this and voted, we do have massive power. I don't like the idea of cynicism being like, oh, well, everything's just screwed. They all have all the power. I think that kind of neuters us and takes away our power. I think we do, but it's a matter of us, I think, just kind of falling asleep. I could keep going on this radical. Okay. Okay. Then one last thing here. No, we're not going there. That actually can get me arrested. I would agree with that, but my point earlier was we have more power than we think through the ballot box. All right. Okay, one last line to draw. Draw this line right here. But the reality in California is that our supply is controlled by a what? What's that called? With a few number of, yeah. So we have an oligopoly that adds 20 to 30 cents per gallon. And so note that creates a much higher price. But notice this higher price relative to my aspirational, my dream about electric transportation. I mean, maybe at some level, politicians, and I'm not trying to go conspiratorial here, but if you are a Gavin Newsom of the world, right, and you do want us to go green, and you are a democratically controlled legislature and Senate who do want us to go green, why investigate this when this is keeping gas really high, and then they can subsidize green energy and then switch us over to, when you're the consumer, you look at those prices, what are you going to do in the future? You're going to go electric, right? So maybe there's some benign neglect. Do you know what that means? Benign meaning not violence, and neglect meaning not dealing with it. Let's let that be, because eventually solar is going to be the way to go. That's going to be more economical. Thanks for the discussion. These discussions are great. Revolution. Revolution. Let me deal with that. Read your history, right? Which I imagine you have. Revolutions usually involve millions of deaths. Yeah. And you decide cost. So let's do cost benefit analysis on revolution, right? And I'll leave it at that. Have a great weekend, everybody.